everyone, and welcome. Today, we are diving deep into a question that sounds super simple, but trust me, it leads to one of the biggest, most mind-bending puzzles in all of science. What does it actually mean for something to have a state? This is a question that really challenges our whole idea of reality itself. So, let's get right into it.
So we're going to kick things off with a line that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a movie. Art says, "Oddly enough, that beer made my head stop spinning." It's just this funny, super relatable way of talking about being in a confusing state. And as it turns out, physicists are kind of obsessed with this exact same idea. And that's because in physics, the state of something isn't just about, feeling dizzy or knowing your GPS coordinates. It is the master key. It's the whole shebang, the complete set of information that unlocks how absolutely everything in the universe works, from the biggest galaxies down to the tiniest atoms they're made of.
For hundreds of years, physics painted this really comforting picture of the universe. It was like a giant, intricate cosmic clock. Every single gear turned with perfect, flawless precision. The idea was if you could just know the exact state of the universe right now, you could predict its entire future, and even perfectly reconstruct its past. This was the classical view of reality.
And this right here gets to the absolute heart of that classical dream. The two phrases you really need to focus on are complete description and perfect prediction. Think about what that implies. A universe with zero secrets and absolutely no surprises. If you could just gather all the data, the future isn't some hazy possibility. It's a certainty, already written down. Okay, so just imagine a billiard ball. In this classical world, its state is simply its exact position and its exact momentum. That's it. Where it is and how it's moving. And if you know those two things, you don't guess where it's going to go, you calculate it with perfect accuracy. Its path is completely predetermined. That was the dream. But then, about a century ago, physicists started peering into the world of the very, very small. And that beautiful, predictable, clockwork universe, well, it just started to fall apart. They found a realm where the old rules just didn't work anymore. Welcome to the great quantum surprise. And this is where everything we thought we knew gets turned on its head. Now look very carefully at the wording here. For a quantum state, it's the most complete description possible. That one little word changes everything. It's admitting that a truly total description might not even be a thing. And here's the kicker. Even with the best information you could possibly have, you still cannot make a perfect prediction. Suddenly, uncertainty is baked right into the fabric of reality. This slide just lays it all out, side by side. On the left, you've got the classical world. Total information, predictable futures, our good old billiard ball. But on the right, you have the quantum world. We only have the most possible information, which gives us a future based on probabilities, like what an electron's spin might be. The difference is just huge. We go from saying it will be here to saying it has a certain chance of being here. So, this brings us to what is arguably the biggest, most debated question in all of modern physics. Is this randomness we see in the quantum world for real? Is it a fundamental feature of the universe? Or is our theory just incomplete? Are we simply missing some hidden piece of the puzzle that if we found it, would make everything certain and predictable again? This very question kicked off something called the hidden variables debate. And this isn't just some technical squabble among scientists. No way. This is a profound battle for the soul of physics itself. It's a huge philosophical clash over the very nature of reality, and it created two very different camps. All right, so here are the two sides in a nutshell. Viewpoint 1, on the left, basically says our theory is incomplete. These guys believe the randomness we see is just an illusion. It's a result of our own ignorance. They argue there are hidden variables out there that, if we only knew them, would make the universe totally predictable again. But viewpoint 2 says, nope, what you see is what you get. The randomness is real, it's fundamental, and the theory is as complete as it's ever going to be. So let's dig into that first viewpoint for a second. The folks who champion hidden variables think there's a deeper layer to reality that we just can't see yet. But even they're split into two camps. Version A is the optimistic one. It says, hey, one day, with better gadgets, we might actually be able to find and measure these hidden variables. But version B is way more profound. It suggests that because we, the observers, are also made of quantum stuff, we are fundamentally part of the system, and we might be forever locked out from ever seeing that deeper level. The other camp, well, they basically say, let's stop chasing ghosts. This viewpoint just accepts that quantum mechanics is, at its core, all about probabilities. They argue the theory is as complete as any theory can possibly be, and that this unpredictability isn't a flaw in our understanding, it's a core feature of the cosmos. In other words, the randomness is a feature, not a bug. So, after a whole century of this epic debate, who's right? Well, the honest truth is, the jury is still out on that. But in the meantime, physicists have jobs to do. They can't just wait around for the philosophers to solve it. So how do they actually navigate this deep, existential puzzle in their day-to-day work? Okay, so for purely practical reasons, the vast majority of working physicists have landed on viewpoint 2. When they're in the lab, when they're running the numbers, they treat the quantum state as the final complete word. It's not because they've somehow proven it's the ultimate truth about reality. It's because this approach, well, it works. It's the mindset that lets us build lasers and design computer chips and even develop quantum computers. This quote from the source material just captures the modern physicist's attitude perfectly. The job of a physicist is to learn and use this calculus of probabilities. It's all about mastering the tools that you have and getting the job done, not necessarily about solving the ultimate mystery of everything. So here's what that actually looks like in practice. Before you take a measurement, an electron spin could be up, could be down. It's just a probability. But the instant an experiment measures it and gets the result up, the practical physicist says, that's it, the state is up. They don't get hung up on some hidden cosmic reason why it was up. For that moment in time, the measurement defines the complete reality of that system. And so we end up right back where we started, with a really profound puzzle. While physicists have a practical way to move forward, that fundamental question is still hanging in the air. If our universe isn't some predictable clockwork machine, but is instead governed by a giant game of cosmic chance, what does that mean for everything we think we know about cause and effect? What does it mean for us if uncertainty is woven into the very fabric of reality itself?
Okay, so we all know the quantum world is weird, right? A particle can be in multiple places, spinning in different directions all at the same time. I mean, how do you even begin to describe something like that with math? Well, the answer is this really elegant tool called the state vector. And today, we're going to build it together from scratch, just by looking at a particle's spin.
So here's the real head-scratcher. Think about a spinning top in our everyday world. It's either spinning one way or the other. It's definite. But a quantum particle, its spin doesn't really have a fixed value before you look at it. So how on earth do you write down an equation for something that's just, well, a cloud of pure possibility?
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this step by step. First, we'll dig into the quantum spin puzzle itself. Then we'll see this amazing trick for simplifying it into a two-dimensional world. After that, we'll meet our building blocks, the basis vectors, and use them to actually write the state vector. And finally, we'll get to the payoff, how this all translates into real-world probabilities. Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, the quantum spin puzzle. Let's get a really clear picture of the problem we're trying to solve here.
So, let's say you have a device that can measure a particle's spin. If you point it along the z-axis, you'll get an answer, either up or down. Simple enough. But here's the crazy part. If you take that exact same particle and measure it along the x-axis instead, you suddenly get left or right. The answer you get literally depends on the question you ask. So, how can one single state possibly contain all of those potential answers at once? So how did physicists crack this nut? Well, they made a really bold, almost radical assumption that just sliced right through all the complexity. And it led them to a surprisingly simple picture, a simple two-dimensional world.
See, they decided to just assume there are no hidden variables. What that means is the particle isn't secretly pointing in some direction that we just don't know about. No, that cloud of possibilities we talked about, they said that's it. That is the complete description. And it turns out when you accept that, the math becomes incredibly simple.
2. Just 2. That's it. That's the number of dimensions you need to describe every single possible spin state of a particle. I know, it sounds impossible, but that's the real magic of this whole mathematical setup. Now, let's be super clear here. We're not talking about two dimensions of physical space, like length and width on a piece of paper. This is a totally abstract, two-dimensional mathematical space. We call it a state space. And any single point in that space gives you a complete description of the particle's potential spin.
Okay, so any 2D space needs some reference points, right? Like an x-axis and a y-axis on a graph? Well, in our quantum state space, those reference points have a special name. We call them basis vectors.
So for our foundation, let's just pick the two possible outcomes of a z-axis measurement. We'll call the state where we definitely measure the spin as up, the ket vector. It's written like this, IU.
And, you guessed it, the state where we measure down is the ket vector ID. These two pure definite states, they're going to be our fundamental building blocks. Now these two basis states, U and D, have a special relationship. We call them orthogonal. And that's just a fancy word with a really simple physical meaning. They're mutually exclusive. It means if a particle is 100% in the up state, the chance of measuring it as down is 0. Zilch, it can't be both.
And listen, this is a really important warning, so don't miss this. In our normal 3D world, up and down are just opposite directions on the same line, right? They're not at right angles. But in this abstract math world, this state space, the vectors that represent those states, U and D, are orthogonal. They're at right angles to each other. It's a purely mathematical thing, but it is absolutely the key to making this whole system work.
All right, so we have our building blocks, our up and down basis vectors. Now for the fun part. Let's use them to write down the recipe for any possible spin state you can imagine. Okay, so at general state, we'll just call it A for now. It isn't going to be purely up or purely down. It's going to be a mix of both. And the fancy physics term for this is superposition. But honestly, just think of it like a recipe. It's a certain amount of the up ingredient mixed with a certain amount of the down ingredient.
So let's actually write this recipe down as an equation. We start with our general state A, and we say that it's equal to
Some amount, let's just call it alpha U, of our up state U plus some amount, alpha D, of our down state D. And that's it. That's the equation. Believe it or not, that simple little formula can describe every single possible spin state there is, just by changing those two alpha numbers.
Okay, so we've got this awesome equation, but what on earth do those alpha numbers actually mean physically? This is where we get to the real payoff. It's all about probability. These alpha numbers have a special name. They're called probability amplitudes. And you have to get this part right. They are not probabilities, not by themselves. They don't have a direct physical meaning you can just go out and measure. There's something deeper, something more fundamental. So how do you get from this weird amplitude thing to a real probability that you can actually measure in a lab? It's a super simple three-step recipe. First, you take the amplitude for the state you care about, let's say alpha U for the up state. Second, you find its squared magnitude. And third, that number you get, that's it. That is the actual, real-world probability of measuring the spin as up. And of course, there's one last common sense rule that has to apply for any of this to work. All the probabilities have to add up to 100%, right? I mean, the chance of finding the spin up plus the chance of finding it down has to equal 1. It has to be one or the other. This little rule is called normalization, and it's a bedrock principle in all of quantum mechanics. And that right there, that's the whole magic of it. The state vector doesn't tell you what the spin is. It tells you the complete set of everything it could be the moment you look. And it gives you the exact odds for each outcome. It's this one beautiful, elegant mathematical object that holds all that potential inside it. Which, of course, brings us to the final truly mind-bending question. We have this perfect mathematical machine that predicts the odds of every outcome flawlessly. But remember, it only describes possibilities. So it forces you to ask, where is the spin actually pointing before we look? Does it even have a direction? Or does the very act of our measurement force it to pick one? And that question? Well, that's one of the deepest mysteries in all of physics.